What's up, ladies and gentlemen? It's Mr. Alex versus Anthony himself. Welcome back. Just want to introduce a couple things to you guys on today. So, the podcast is called Alex versus Anthony. If you've been following me for any time now, you would know what Alex or who Alex and who Anthony is. So we're going to introduce a different type of segment to the podcast. It's going to be two different types. One is going to be called Talks with Ant, and the other one is going to be called Story Time with Alex. On today is Talks with Ant. So Talks with Ant is going to go this way. We're going to talk about a specific topic, and we're just going to address it. We're going to break it down, and we're just going to go dive in deep into the topic. And I'm going to just kind of give some type of advice. No, I don't claim to be any type of counselor or any type of, no one with his PhD. But through my life experience, I've been allowed the experience to experience a lot of things. So I'm going to just give my 2 cents. Now, story time with Alex. Same goal, different avenue. Alex is going to go through all his stories and all his experiences and all his escapades to bring us to our destination. But talks with Ant today. So today's topic is going to be one that we kind of shun from in the Black community, and it's called mental health. A lot of people hear mental health and you think somebody is crazy. You think somebody who, their screws aren't on tight. But let me read to you what mental health is. It says, mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, how we feel, and how we act. It also helps determine how we handle stress, relate to others, make choices, and mental health is important at every stage of life, from childhood and adolescence through adulthood. Over the course of your life, if you experience mental health, your thinking, mood, and behavior could be affected. Many factors contribute to mental health problems, including biological factors such as genes or brain chemistry, life experiences such as trauma or abuse, family history of mental health problems are also included. So when I read this, I realize that we all have some level of mental health. If you're alive, mental health exists. Why? Because we're here biologically. Somebody brought us in here. We got genes from somebody. We all have our own life experiences, and we all have our own family history that could affect our mental health. Now, when I say something that in the Black community we shun from, or we don't really speak on, is because as Blacks, we have gone through a lot. And we have always been what we call the survivors, or the ones who have to fight through and just kind of overcome as is. It's not until now where mental health is really breaking free in the Black community, and people are actually going and see counselors and speaking out and speaking to people who can help them. But it's not something that is very, very popular in our communities. Now, I know this is a podcast on relationships, so we're going to tie mental health and relationships together. How does mental health and relationships even coincide? Or what do they have to do with the other, you may ask? Now, mental health, like we read in the definition, has a lot to do with how we react, how we socialize with others, how we view ourselves. A lot of these things affect our relationships on a daily basis. Now, I was watching an interview on The Breakfast Club, and it was with Taraji P. Henson, a counselor by the name of Jay Barrett, I believe his name is. Please forgive me, my brother, if I got it wrong. And another young lady, and please forgive me for forgetting your name. But They were speaking on mental health. And Mr. Barrett said something very, very interesting that caught my attention. He said that a lot of times we get into relationships with individuals because we have shared drama or shared trauma. So what attracts me to you is your trauma. What attracts me to you is that we've had the same hurts. What attracts me to you is the fact that we're both depressed. What attracts me to you is the fact that you didn't grow up with your dad. What attracts me to you is that your mom died at 6. What attracts me to you is that I was the first child who had to take care of my 2 younger siblings, such as you did. Now, we all understand that life happens. But when you want to spend the rest of your life with somebody, being attracted to their trauma could be very, very dangerous. Because the moment this person now decides that they want to heal from their trauma, or that they are moving forward with their life and not letting their trauma, dictate their life anymore, the bond that you once had with the individual now begins to dissolve because the attraction that you had towards one another is no longer there. Because if I'm attracted to your trauma and you decide you want to forgive all your family members that did you wrong and that you want to move on with your life, now the very thing that attracted me to you is gone. So what am I supposed to do? Who am I attracted to now? It's a whole different individual in whom I'm dealing with now, as opposed to the person who I met, who I had a shared trauma with. Now, another issue. I hear women say all the time, oh my God, my girl dates the same man just with a different name, the same dude. Like she always picked the same type of dude. That can be an issue of mental health. I've heard a lot of people say that we look for our moms, or we look for our dads and our spouses, or we look for a specific person that has affected us in our childhood. We look for that person when we're looking for our significant other. Now, if your situation with your biological dad or your biological mother wasn't a healthy one, and you're now an adult looking for someone to be with for the rest of your life, and you find yourself picking the same type of individual, and then you find that that person pretty much is the same type of person that your dad was, or your mom was, or your aunt or your grandmother who kind of did you an injustice growing up, that's mental health. Why? Because you haven't healed from that situation. You haven't, forgiven them or moved on in that stage of life. And now you find yourself in a cycle over and over and over again, and you're picking the same person over and over again. Another thing that mental health could be attributed to in relationships is people who decide that they need to stay enduring abuse. When you don't see yourself as anything better than what you're getting or what you deserve, it's a mental issue. A lot of people's insecurities isn't really their body. It's a mental thing. When you don't feel happy with yourself, or you don't feel that you deserve something, or you don't feel that, that you deserve everything that you should get, it's not a physical thing. That's a mental thing. That's an emotional thing. Somewhere down the line, somebody emotionally scarred you, mentally scarred you, where you now feel that you're not adequate enough, or you don't deserve the better things in life or the best person for your life. So you sit there and you endure either physical abuse, mental abuse, and you just take it. And you feel that, where am I going to go? What am I really going to do? Who's really going to love me? And then you start blaming yourself, or you start justifying the actions that the other person is doing. Another thing that mental health can be very, very can affect in our relationships is fear. As we read in the definition, life experiences is part of mental health, or can affect our mental health. Those people that walk around fearful all the time, especially in relationships, people who You might meet somebody who's really a nice person, really wants to give you their all, really wants to share their life with you, really wants to do right by you, but you've been hurt and scarred so much that you're fearful to even open up or fearful to give that person a chance. Or you say, you know what? I'm going to do them an injustice before they do it to me just because I don't want to be hurt again. It's mental health. Triggers. Triggers is very important. You ever seen people who just, certain things just trigger them and they just go off, or certain things trigger them and they become sad, or triggers could also lead to happiness, but it's very rare where something triggers you and you become happy. More times than less, triggers affect us in a negative way. You know, certain smells, certain things we see, certain things we hear. A lot of things trigger us in a manner in which we react negatively. Now, if we're in a relationship and our significant other does not know or understand that these certain triggers trigger you, they might be sitting there like, yo, what's going on here? Like, why every time we pass this block, or every time I come home and you smell the cologne or whatever, or, you know what I'm saying? Or you might have given a coworker a hug, you come home and her perfume is on your jacket, but the trigger of your significant other's relationship is her ex-husband used to cheat on her with, you know what I mean, with his employee. And now you coming home with a little perfume on, just because you gave a little innocent hug, it triggers that thought. You understand what I'm saying? I had a conversation one time with a young lady. I'm gonna give you a little story. I know this ain't stories with Alex, but I was talking to this young lady, and I was flying out. I flew into Milwaukee. And we weren't in a relationship, but you know what I mean, we was talking. Flew into Milwaukee, and she had been married in the past. And it looked like it doesn't look like, her husband was cheating and doing his thing. And it just happened to be that he used to have a female that he was sleeping with who was a flight attendant. And they used to meet in Milwaukee. They had this specific hotel where they had sex. So when I told this young lady that I was in Milwaukee now, it triggered that, oh no, she went as far as to tell me that I went to go sleep with the same flight attendant that her husband did. Now, look how far the trigger got her, to the point where I'm now having a whole sexual relationship with a woman that I don't even know exists, just because I mentioned the same place. So that's how much triggers could affect you in your relationship. Triggers and reactions go hand in hand, because anything that triggers you gives you some type of reaction. So if I'm triggered about something, there's a reaction that's coming after. So the way we react to things is very important by how we are triggered, because every cause has an effect. The trigger and the reaction is the cause and the effect. So once you realize that these things trigger you, you're gonna react. And that reaction is very, very, very scary. Now, in my experience, I didn't know what mental health was until I was not forced, but until I went to therapy for the first time when I was married. Granted, I went to therapy for marriage counseling. That didn't work. Nope. And I'm not saying that marriage counseling doesn't work. It didn't work because I wasn't completely transparent in the counseling. That's another thing. If you're gonna go ahead and actually have some type of counseling or therapy, don't go if you're not willing to really be fully transparent and fully disclose all the issues that, one, you have going on within yourself, or if it is some type of relationship counseling that you have with your significant other. Because it won't work if you're going at it only giving them a piece of you or just half of what you're thinking. Anyway, so that was the first time that I actually experienced therapy. And in therapy, I realized that a lot of my issues as an adult in my relationship were tied to a lot of my childhood traumas and childhood issues that I thought I had suppressed, or I thought gotten over. So much so that even after my marriage didn't work out, I continued to go to the therapist just for me, just because I felt like, you know what? All right, my marriage is over, but my life has to continue. You understand? So because my life has to continue, I need to heal from these things because I plan on being married again one day or having kids one day. And I don't want my traumas, and now I have more trauma because my childhood traumas, my marriage trauma, the divorce, all that. Now I don't want those things to affect my future life. And it wasn't until I started to speak to somebody that I realized that, yo, sometimes it's not even your fault, or it's not even something that you do on your own. You know what I mean? Like, nobody wakes up and wants to be the Grinch all the time. Or nobody wakes up and wants to have an attitude with their significant other all the time. Like, I don't think most people wake up that way. But at the end of the day, these are the cards that we're being dealt because of our childhood experiences, our adolescent experiences, or even some of our adult experiences. So my own experience has taught me that speaking to somebody is very, very important. Now, granted, when I first went in there, I didn't want to speak to, I'm a man. And we all know that men, we quote unquote not supposed to speak about our emotions. We're not supposed to speak about things that bother us. Men, we don't do those things. We don't talk about our emotions. We don't do that. But let me tell you, after the first session, it was an hour session each time I went. After the first session, by the second session, I wanted to pay him for the second hour every time I was there. Why? Because it was some type of freedom that I received every time that I was able to disclose more and more about myself. So that leads me to my next point. Women and mental health. Now, women have their own ways of thinking that their mental health is good. You know, I hear women say all the time, when I'm going through something, I just go shopping. You know, y'all call that retail therapy. Or I just go take a trip with my girls and y'all talk all y'all business, and then most of y'all female friends support y'all theories. You know, yes, girl, he ain't this and he ain't that and da 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 da. And as much as it may make you feel good at that moment, it's not really healthy. Why? Because you're looking for somebody who doesn't really want to take your side, but is going to give you the real deal, or is going to give you it how it's supposed to be. Not because you my girl, you know what I'm saying, I'm going to take your side. Or sometimes our friends have the same type of drama or trauma that we got. So at the end of the day, that ain't healthy either. Another thing that women do is y'all go and y'all have sex. Because, you know, sex, it's supposed to alleviate. That's like our antidote for everything. Sex, you go, you have sex, and everything is just supposed to be taken care of. But after the highs of sex, then what? You understand? So there's a lot of things that we go to as well, I can't say we, a lot of things that women go to that may not be negative, but when it comes to healing and moving on, it's not really the best route to take. You know, women are tasked with so much. Like, we expect you guys to go to work, handle the house, take care of the kids, make sure you perform in bed, do a whole bunch of things. And most men don't really ask you how your day was or what can I do to help or anything of that nature. We just expect you to keep going and just perform at 100% all the time and not really care about your mental health or your emotional health. I'm not saying all men, but in most relationships, that's just how it is. We're tasked every day to do our job. We come home, we have sex, and we do it all over again tomorrow. You understand what I'm saying? Nobody really sits down and thinks about, you know what? How was her day today? Like, did she have something that really affected her today? How was her boss that she doesn't really like? How was her relationship with him today? Like, did he stress her out? You know, things of that nature. Men and mental health now, it's a total different ballgame. Like, men, we're taught only the tough survive. Men don't cry. Men don't talk. Emotional men are either soft or funny style. Like, we don't really talk. We can't, because that's just what we taught. You know what I'm saying? We play ball. We'll go to the barbershop and we'll talk about everything else. We'll talk about girls. We'll talk about sports. We'll talk about how much Braun had this week, how this, that. We will fight about sports. We will fight about we'll gamble. We do all sorts of stuff. But nobody ever becomes transparent and says, yo, man, I'm really struggling with this thing right now. Why? Because we're thinking that people are going to judge us, or other men especially. You know, so we never take the time to sit down and say, this is affecting me. Or, yo, have you and your wife ever gone through this? So how about you and your girl? Like, yo, you know what I'm saying? Because where is the platform, or who is the platform and who we can go speak to? So we're just going through life, just adding on traumas and traumas and traumas and more issues with no one to talk to, really and truly. All my men who listen to this podcast, who do we talk to? Like, who is there that we go to when we struggling? Moms don't count. You know what I'm saying? Mom, you can't, 99% of the time, once you become a certain age, you don't want to go to your mom with certain troubles. Why? Because you're supposed to have it taken care of. Like, you're supposed to be a man now. Most of us, if you grew up in my time or in the hood or whatever, most of our dads aren't really present. And if they are, we don't really have those type of relationships. We can't even go to pops. You know what I'm saying? Like, who do we go to? And then the people who we do go to, they ain't no better. They ain't no good because they going through the same issues. So where is this space? Like, I was thinking, I want to make some type of space or platform where men could come together and we could actually just chop it up and just be fully transparent. It don't only got to be about relationships. You know what I'm saying? I didn't have my dad in my life. My mom remarried when I was 15 years old. So from when I was young to 15, I didn't know what a male figure looked like in the household. I had to learn everything myself. I remember when I and I don't mean to be too graphic, when I first ejaculated off of masturbation, I didn't want to tell my mother, you know what I'm saying? Because I don't want to tell my mom that. But at the end of the day, I didn't have nobody else to talk to. I shouldn't be having to go to my mom like, Mom, what's that hand sanitizer looking stuff on my leg? Like, come on, like, you know what I'm saying? Who do we go to? It's not just as a man, it's even as a young man. And even for these men that are listening to the podcast, we got to become those platforms for the younger generation. You know what I'm saying? We got to become that person who the younger generation can feel comfortable coming and talk to about anything. Anything. We can't shun people away because we don't agree with their, one, lifestyle, two, frame of thought. Like, we can't do that because at the end of the day, we're probably the only hope that they had. So men, we got to come together. We got to create some type of platform for other young men to come to us and speak to us and be able to just share what's going on in their life. And in closing, this one is one that's really dear to me because most of you guys know I grew up in the church, and a lot of people who grew up in the church can probably relate to what I'm about to say. But if you grew up in the church, a lot of times your form of mental health counseling is pray on it. And if prayer don't work, you fast and you pray. You know what I'm saying? Because there's nothing impossible for God. Which in all of that, that is true. But the Bible also tells you that faith without works is dead. And in this situation, when we talk about works, we talk about the realistic, the natural form of works. Yes, pray, fast, do all you want to do spiritually, but there's a physical and emotional and mental part of it that has to be affected also. And mental health does not negate the power of God or whoever it is that you believe in. It does not negate the fact that being spiritual does not play some type of part in your healing, but there's also a natural part of it where you have to now go and release these things and speak to somebody and take natural steps on how to move on. Growing up in the church, man, let me tell you, relationships is like talking about, they talk more about the devil in church than they do relationships. Because everything that goes wrong is the devil's fault. And relationships is like an abomination to talk about in church. So you grow up in church and nobody's talking about sex. Nobody's talking about teaching you how to be a husband. Everybody's telling you to get married though, but they're not telling you how to be a husband. They're telling you that you aren't supposed to have sex before marriage, but nobody's telling you how not to do that because there's a world out here full of temptation. And it's just certain conversations that we don't have. And the issue is a lot of church people grow up all messed up in their head. They grow up confused. And then when they hit the real world, it's like, oh my God, there's so much out here. And they fall for everything. Why? Because mental health is not something that's nurtured in the church. Everything is so spiritual in the church. You know, everything is so, God and God and God and God, which, don't get me wrong, I'm all for it. But at the end of the day, we have to have realistic conversations, especially with our youth growing up in the church. Sex has to be talked about. Relationships has to be talked about. Marriage has to be talked about. Not the wedding, but marriage has to be talked about. How do you stay married? How is it being a married man? You know, like in my mind, I thought it was all roses. Why? Because nobody really told me the realistic facts. That every day you got to get up and make a decision and say, I choose to be married today. No matter what, how I feel, no matter what it is, I'm going to choose to be married today. Nobody tells you these things. Nobody tells you that you wake up some days and you just don't love your wife. Like, yo, get out of here. Like, they don't tell you that. But you got to honor that vow that you made. You know what I'm saying? These are the conversations that we got to have. These are the things that we got to make a platform, both men, women, adolescents, kids. You know, we got to make platforms for the next generation to grow up with a healthy mental state. You know, social media has such an effect on our kids nowadays, and they're feeding them all sorts of unrealistic things. And when we lack giving them the true knowledge that we have or have acquired over the time that we've been on this earth, we do them an injustice because now they're being fed all these unrealistic goals that social media, movies, and all these things have them believing that that's what life is called. So wasn't supposed to be here too long with y'all, but listen, mental health, if you haven't spoken to somebody yet, you don't know a counselor, look up your insurance companies, see what they offer, speak to somebody. If you got me on social media, DM me. I would try to hit you up with something, give you something, lead you in the right direction. But it's very, very imperative that we go and we take care. We go to the gym all the time to be healthy, but nobody goes to the gym mentally. Nobody goes to the gym emotionally. We need to speak to somebody who's going to nurture our mind, nurture our spirits, nurture our emotions. And sadly enough, sometimes your pastor can't do it, your mother can't do it, your brother, your sister. Those are not the right people. You got to go to somebody who doesn't know you. It's not going to judge you, and it's just going to be here for your well-being. This was Talks with Ant. See y'all. Holla at you. Peace.